You were speaking about the cocktail genre. That's the inspiration for the game.
Okay, so as I was saying, it is something that people slapped on it, that it was a mix of genres. It was never something that we were really actively thinking of. We were looking at gameplay elements that we could use to recreate the experience of becoming a Dragon Commander. And so we figured out, well, if you would be running your ship, it would be more or less like you would be Captain Kirk on the Star Trek Enterprise. So you would have your bridge on which you would be. You would have to make decisions about things which affect the lives of everybody, but also about things that affect your personal life. So that's how we came up with the RPG part. You would have to make political, diplomatic, social, economical, and so forth decisions. And then obviously also military decisions. How do you make military decisions? Well, you need a strategy map, right? So say, what are we going to attack? What are we going to build? What technology are we going to research? So that's where that comes from. And then obviously there would be actual battle, which means that you have to get into the action. And what better way than to do that in an RTS mode? Then obviously, since you're a Dragon Knight, you would want to use your own powers to assist your troops, and that's how you got to become a dragon in the middle of an RTS mode. And you mix all of that together, and indeed you have something which is multi-genre, but really, when you're playing it, it feels like, okay, I am this guy, I'm this Dragon Commander.
Excellent. Do you have any particular games that you guys look to for inspiration as you were creating Dragon Commander?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there has been the Cinemaware games, which were actually also multi-genre games, which were about you are the King of Chicago, or you're the Defender of the Crown, or you're the Rocket Ranger. Then, obviously, we looked a lot at StarCraft and Command & Conquer and any RTS that was out there. For the RPGs, we pretty much knew our business already. I mean, we've been making RPGs for quite some time.
Sure, yes.
For the strategy part, we always wanted to have an RTS in which you would actually have a dynamic campaign. So we looked at games like Axis and Allies, board games. We prototyped the board game even to recreate the strategy part of Dragon Commander, and that's how all of that came to be.
Cool, all right. Well, we have one of our forum users had asked, you guys in Divinity and Divinity 2 had a certain humorous flair in the game. They want to know if that continues in Dragon Commander, if you have some irreverent moments.
Irreverent moments for sure, yes. So here's the thing about Dragon Commander. It is taking itself very serious, but it's doing this in a light way. So we have very serious issues which are being touched upon, but they're in a fantastical setting. And we make light of it so that it's still entertaining to go through it. But we do want you to think about how it feels like to be in command of a vast empire and have to deal with really tough decisions. And to do that, we inspired ourselves of actual political issues which you would find in a newspaper on a day-to-day basis. And we put those in a fantasy context. So it is light, it is humoristic to all make it very... how shall I say, swallowable, but at the same time it is extremely serious.
Okay, well, speaking of, I guess, some of the more exciting gameplay elements, I have to ask, dragons on jetpacks, how did you come up with that?
It was a mix of circumstances, I'd have to say. It was a discussion when we were designing the first dragon for Dragon Commander, and we were saying, well, you know what, this guy has to be able to go over the battlefield really, really fast. So how do you go faster? Well, with an afterburner. Well, how would a dragon have an afterburner? So the first answer to that was rather funny. The second answer to that was, let's put a jetpack on his back, and so that's how the jetpack came to be.
Cool. All right. We have... so you spoke a little bit about the political effects you have, the real political issues you have in the game. Given that this is a fantasy game and they usually tend not to address real-world issues, why did you decide this was a game that you figured is something that to make these real issues a part of?
I had a small design for a game I've always wanted to make but never got around to make, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to put that in there, and that's how it comes from, where it comes from. And then the consequence of that is that probably we do the most choice and consequence in this game than in any other RPG that I've played. The choice matrices that are active in this game are enormous. It's really it's very cool. It's a very cool system behind it, and to me at least it works fantastically. Well. All
right, cool. One of our users from the forums mentions from what he's seen in previous previews that it is possible to, in the RTS map, get down to the point where you've eliminated every single unit and it's just dragon versus dragon combat. Given that there are a couple of different dragons, what do you try and do to balance that out? Is that a question maybe more for Farhang?
It is.
Well, Actually, that's true. So you're actually gaining these recruits and getting your resources in order to build these units. And at the end, of course, usually the player that plays well can end the battle quite swiftly, and your insight on the strategy map also determines how you're going to start this RTS battle. If that goes well, then you actually have a very smooth sailing approach. But the dragon actually, can turn the tide quite. We have three types of dragons. One is for players that really like to use their dragon extensively, so those are more the action-oriented players. The units will have damage modifiers decreased so that the player can be really active in assaulting enemy dragons. We have a more balanced dragon that actually supports his unit in a bit, but jumps in and out occasionally. And we also have the dragon that's for the player that really likes to play RTSs, which is only there to make surgical incisions, just appear, support his units occasionally, but will increase the damage modifiers of the RTS units there. So we have catered for all these different playing types, and it's true, near the end, if you're running out of resources, you have a bunch of units fighting each other, and players really have to use their dragon well and their dragon skills well to try to actually win. And there's of course also a stalemate detection system in there that will then point out the winner depending on your resources and performance.
It's also worth noting, pointing out, I think, that if you want to turn into a dragon after you've been killed as a dragon, it costs you resources. So if you ran out of resources, you won't be able to transform into a dragon anymore.
Absolutely.
Okay. Looking at some previews for this game, you can definitely see that the strategy level looks a lot like a board game. And I do even recall seeing, I think it was last August, you guys had posted up pictures of the Divinity Dragon Commander board game. Tell me a bit about the inspirations behind the board game that's behind the game.
All right, it's really very simple. I mean, it's strategy games like Axis and Allies were a very big inspiration. It's strategy games that have movement points, that have attack points and defense points, and then have you take countries which have IPCs or gold values per turn, which allow you to buy even more units, and with some research upgrades. We mixed in a bit of Magic the Gathering there, because card gameplay does add a lot to the tactical opportunities when doing battle. It makes for a lot of I want to kill you moments when you're playing it with friends. So those are two big inspirations, and then we base ourselves on a whole bunch of little things from other board games.
Cool. All right. Well, we've been about 15 minutes answering some pre-submitted questions, and I think now might be a good time for us to actually start to see the gameplay, which is what people are here to watch after all. So if you could please, Farhang, let's start talking through how the game will actually work.
All right, will do. So let's switch the screen to some in-game footage, and I'll raise the audio level. Let's see, this should be okay. So I'll give you a short background of the story of Dragon Commander first. So the game takes place many years before all the other games. The player is actually a bastard son of an emperor, and he's a dragon knight. So this emperor was actually a pretty vile character, and he's deceased, and actually your brothers and sisters are fighting over dominance for Rivellon. And Maxus, the dragon mage, which is the fellow you're seeing here, actually comes to you and says, well, you're a bastard son, but the blood of the king runs through you, and you're the purest of all these people, and we really need you to reclaim the lands of Rivellon and set them free again. So at this point in the game, we're a couple of turns away. So a game cycle in Dragon Commander takes place in 3 different phases. So first of all, you'll be on your ship, which is the Raven. You'll talk to characters on the ship. You'll do talking to your generals. You'll be talking to your princesses, all kinds of things. You'll be upgrading your units. After you do that, you enter the strategy map. And in the strategy map, you select which countries you're going to attack, units that you're going to buy, so that's the board game part. And once you get into conflict, that's when you go into the RTS, and you can fight out the RTS and shapeshift and materialize as a dragon to support your units in-game. Once that's done, back to your mothership. So that's one complete turn. It's mothership, strategy map, combat. So anyway, we're going to move in here, and this is somewhere in the middle of the game, where you normally start the game with a bunch of units. a bunch of people on board, so you start with very few people, and as the turns progress you get more and more guys on board, because you're nobody at first, and when you start gathering your generals and princesses and counselors, you become a more important person. So here we are somewhere after the 5th, 6th turn, where Max is actually giving us a heads up. He's saying like, it's about time that you actually should get married, and he's saying next turn there'll be princesses on board, and you'll have to pick one. It's not concerning anything that has to do with love or anything romantic, but you need to do this for political reasons. The turns in Dragon Commander are actually mostly a system. Just like in Civilization, things actually happen, and only the scripted turns are in the beginning and near the end, and occasionally when there are story events. The rest of it is just a gigantic pool of situations for your generals and counselors that the game draws these things from. And this actually creates an interesting vibe, because every time you play the campaign, it's slightly different. So here we have the War Room. We just spoke to Maxos. Of course, all the characters in the game will be fully voice recorded. So the situation you just saw. Usually, I did the voice acting of all these characters, but we recently got all the voices back from the UK after the recordings. So very soon you'll have full facial capture and motion capture, and also voice dialogue. So don't worry about that. It's still work in production. So what else do we have on the Raven? We're going to go over to the throne room, where we have our counselors. Now, I'm going to step back here and tell you guys about this. So we have very topical questions in Dragon Commander, because, as Sven said, it's an interesting idea, but it also really evokes a lot of emotion. So we have very things that people really recognize from the past couple of years, and we went through a lot of election campaigns to actually pick out the sensitive issues, so that people have this strong relation with them. And again, these turns are pretty much generated, so I have no idea what question is going to pop up here, so we're going to talk to these guys to see what's going on. Also, from left to right, all these all these counselors represent the different races in your empire, and they're all kind of stereotypical characters of mainstream political parties that we know from our actual world. We have the undead, which is a which is a religious fundamentalist. We have the elves, which is more the left side, a very left liberal character. We have the dwarf, which is a right-wing, more conservative character, and we have our lizards, which are liberals, very liberal characters. So, and we also have our imps, which are pretty much pretty crazy guys, and they're very much into science and technology, and they'll do anything to actually progress technological and educational things. They don't really have any ethical or moral boundaries. So if you talk to these guys, we'll see what kind of questions they're popping up. So if you talk to the lizard killer, there's a situation going on here. Apparently there is a great lizard artist, Della Gecko, who has made a sculpture which is critical of the government. And he's a pacifist, and he doesn't really like war. So the thing is it a reason to ban this exposition? And Yorick, our undead counselor, is absolutely against any criticism on the government. And basically they're asking us, is it okay if art criticizes the government? Now, there's these different characters here that have their opinions. The undead, for instance, says, well, when one is critical of the emperor, one is critical of the gods. So it's clearly against this. But the elf, on the other hand, says, well, of course there are people in the kingdom who eye our politics with disapproval, but it keeps us on our toes. It's a kind of natural thing, so why should we actually ban it? The imp, on the other hand, says, well, aren't we all free to express ourselves? What's going on here? So we can actually, we can actually go for banning this art, or we can accept it. So it's all up to the people at home. So Trevor?
Yes, indeed. If you're watching this and you'd like to cast a vote either for or against, either in the chat on Twitch TV if you're on the chat, or else on Twitter, say either on Twitter, say us either ban or allow with hashtag Dragon Commander. And on the chat window there, of course, just say either ban or allow. We'll see what the vote ends up to be. Right now, it looks pretty bad for this artist, though. I'll tell you what, most of the people are saying ban.
Okay. So in the meantime,
there come the counter votes.
Oh, it's quite. In the meantime, we're going to go over to the bar where we can actually meet our general, so you guys can get an idea of what else is going on board. No ship would be complete without a bar. In the bar, we have our various different characters. These guys are generals. It's also important to note. Back to the counselors. So answering these questions actually fluctuates the way they see you. So their attitudes go up and down depending on if you agree with them or not. And these attitudes actually represent themselves in favors. So if you manage to get these attitudes above a certain percent, you get favors, and these favors are usually presented in the form of cards. Now, these cards have different outputs, and different races have different abilities and specializations. And of course, agreeing with the elves or the undead or with whoever also unlocks race-specific upgrades that you can put on your units. I had to say that because when we get to the bar, we actually have our generals as well. These guys all have their story arcs and their backgrounds, and the way you act with them develops their characters as well. And they also can give you favors that you can use on the strategy map and RTS to actually gain the upper hand. For instance, if we talk to Edmund here, Edmund is a lizard. He's a very racist lizard, but he's a fantastic general. And his story actually... basically, what's going on is that the imps want Edmund to go over to inspect their troops, because Edmund is such a fantastic general. They really respect his opinion and what he has to say. The problem is Edmund really hates imps. He really hates imps, and he's telling you, I really don't want to go there. But we can counter that. We can say like, well, screw it, you have to go there. If they ask you to jump, you ask how high. It's what you're supposed to do. Or you can say, you know what? If you go there, you can kick some ass if you feel like not doing anything. It's all up to you. So, and again, what you choose, it doesn't matter what you choose, but it does develop the character of this general, and of course it does result in cards as well. So it's up to the guys at home again what you want to choose. Is he going to be rude, or is he not going to be rude?
Let's go with Paragon or Rebel path. Is he going to be a Paragon and be nice to these people, or Rebel and be like, nah, you guys can kiss off? Vote for us either in the Twitch TV comments here or else on Twitter with the hashtag DragonCommand. We do have the votes in, by the way, for the first proposal here, so whenever you guys are ready to go back to it, let me know.
Let's do it. Let's go.
The votes ended up being slightly in favor of allow, although everyone's voting for rude here, so...
Okay, so basically we are going to allow freedom of expression?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Surely. Yes. Okay. Censorship is a tyrant's tool, Commander. I thought you'd be able to rise above a bit of innocent criticism. I clicked the other option, which is funny. I'm under pressure here, people. So, unwillingly, we actually banned art that has to do with it, and of course, the counselor is absolutely happy with it. So yes, prohibit telekickers, profanities, Commander. Better yet, have them pulverized. So he's actually quite serious in this, and of course, the Alpha says, well, it's quite nasty that you're doing this, and the Imp also has a reaction to this. But why, Commander? It was such a pretty statue. Made me out to be a little demon nibbling on blood-dripping bones. Very cute. So, we're going to go over to the laboratory so we can show you what else is on the ship. So, these siblings that you have that are rivaling for Rivellon, they actually made pacts with demons in Rivellon that gave them this technology. So this technology is coming from a different kind of setting, and you must imagine it's like the Middle Ages, but then with nuclear tech. So it's quite unnatural in the world of Rivellon to have this here, and there's also a demon infused in your ship. Now, Grumio is your imp mechanic, and he actually upgrades your units for you, and also gives you the jetpack and so forth, and all the other cool things. But the ship actually sinks to him in his sleep. His function here is to provide your units with upgrades. So if we check out the list of upgrades, we can see that there's quite a bunch of them. In Dragon Commander, we actually have one army type for all the factions. But the unique thing is that every unit has about 4 to 5 different upgrades. So the whole idea is that you select a way that you play the game, because you can't have all the upgrades at the end anyway. And the way you choose to play and upgrade your units depends how you're also going to use your dragon. And more importantly, in multiplayer, you actually have to see how you're going to rebound and counter your enemies' upgrades as well. And you can actually immediately unlock upgrades by buying them immediately, or you can research them over time. The shorter time it takes, the more expensive it is. The longer, of course, the cheaper it is. And if we move over to the personal quarters, we can see that Maxus is there. Maxus is a main story mechanic, obviously, but he also takes care of your dragon skills. So, like Grumio, if you actually talk to him, you can tell him, like, go out there and try to find out some dragon skills. And through the walk of the game, the further you get, the more skills he actually has for you to unlock and research. Trevor, do you have any idea if we have any conclusive results on the Edmund situation?
We do indeed.
Which I will try to click correctly.
The results were overwhelmingly for being rude, so let's go for that one.
Okay.
The lizard's having...
So we're just going to tell them, you know what? They overdo protocol, but you can go ahead and kick some ass.
Excellent. I always wanted people to...
And of course, he's very happy with that. Now, all these different generals here as well, they actually reflect on the things happening on the ship. They'll reflect on the things happening in the world. If you've lost consecutively, if you won consecutively, they'll make remarks of the other generals as well. So it's quite a lively place to return to.
And you see the consequences next turn also.
That is correct. So, are we going to...
They didn't hear that.
Oh, they didn't hear it? Really? Okay. So, are we going to move over to explaining you the strategy map?
That sounds good. Let's go show some of that now. There's some really interesting elements to feature there. So, yes, let's go talk about that.
So we're just going to set up the multiplayer in order to show you how the combat progresses and the strategy map as well.
All right, in the meantime, there's a couple of questions I can send over to you here, Sven, if you'd like, while we're...
Yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to add, it's what I was trying to say, Faring. So in the next turn, you will see the consequences of the choice that you made with Edmund, or the Lizard General. So each turn, you see the consequences of each choice that you made in the previous turn.
Yes, when you're doing these things for various factions, like, for example, what we just did, you clearly made the lizard people probably kind of happy by favoring the general, and you upset the elves by saying censors, we're going to censor things here because we clicked poorly. What sort of effect does that have actually in-game when you do this kind of thing?
So the game tracks what factions are thinking of you, and there is actually media in the game also. It's called Revelant Times. It's like a very popular tabloid, and through that you can actually see what people are thinking of you. So if you are going to really upset the elves all the time, you might actually gain favor with the dwarves, and eventually the dwarves are going to start making propositions to you, and they say, well, clearly you favor the dwarves, and we are going to... I'm not going to say, because I don't want to do any spoilers, but you enter what we call a faction arc. So faction arcs are things that you can only gain access to if you gain really a lot of favor by certain factions. And almost by definition, it means that you are going to get in trouble with other factions if you get too far on the faction arc. And so each faction arc has what we know called a golden goal, a silver goal, a bronze goal, and they hate your guts goal. So you can be like really popular with the, let's continue with the elves, and really hated by the dwarves, but then you're going to get the favors from the elves, which are different from the favors that you get from the dwarves or the undead. You can also try to be diplomatic about it and compromise so that everybody's happy, but then you'll never get to the really good stuff from the factions because they'll call you a grey politician who doesn't have any vision. So it's tough sometimes.
Okay, you talk about getting favors from various factions. Is that just they like you, or is there some actual remunerative thing you get?
No. You really, the cards as a favor mechanic, and we went over it very fast because we only have the space of 1 hour, but there's really literally hundreds of cards. Some of them can have a really deep impact. For instance, if the lizards are like very good politicians, they can give you the option to make a country immune to invasion. Or the dwarves, obviously being industrial capitalists, are going to be very good at squeezing out every single penny money that they can from a country. So the elves, obviously being very on the left, will have their own opinion about tax and labor wages, etc. And these things then affect how your empire is running.
Cool. Okay. We had a question. Actually, a couple people, while we were showing the inside of the ship, were mentioning how very good and steampunky and awesome the design is. Can you talk to me some about the inspiration behind what was the visual style for Dragon Command?
Well, we always wanted to make a steampunk game, so this was the perfect opportunity for it. And we're from Belgium, and we have this artist here whose name is Victor Horta, so he's very Art Nouveau-ish. And so we started getting inspired by that, and we used various elements from there. Obviously, if you want to have the in-depth, detailed art background, you would have to have one of our artists present here to give you the backgrounds.
Sure, that's cool, though. Okay. So we're going to head over to Farhang, I think, in a moment, where we will have you start to show some of the actual in-game gameplay. But someone did mention, and here's a good question to lead into things with. On Twitter, someone asked, so dragons are fairly powerful, but are they powerful enough where you can effectively field one against an entire army and expect to be able to win?
No, I think that if you stay in dragon form and you have an entire country's army against you, you will eventually die. You'll do a lot of damage, and depending on the dragon skills that you take with you, you can really do a lot of damage. But if the other player doesn't play like a complete idiot, you should be able to. Well, you shouldn't be able to win.
Alrighty. So we're going to be showing multiplayer gameplay here. But I did want to note for all of our single-player fanatics on GOG and anybody else who's watching that a lot of what you're seeing here, indeed almost everything you're seeing here, is going to be available for single-player game. And indeed, you were mentioning when we were talking earlier that a lot of what people were developing in multiplayer influenced what you're doing with your single-player AI. So as Farhang finishes up getting ready, you want to talk briefly about that?
Sorry, I didn't 100% understand the question. You were breaking up there.
I'm sorry. So we're showing multiplayer gameplay here, but the tactics and things that you're seeing in multiplayer gameplay do apply to single player. And I was asking you what examples do you have of where what you've done in multiplayer has informed you as you're crafting the AI for single player?
Yeah, so right now we're playing, we have beta testers every single day coming into our office, and we're playing with them. So we're learning all the insights of our game ourselves, what sneaky tactics are possible, which previously only existed on paper. And especially what we're learning is about skill combinations between what the dragon can do, what the units can do. There's a whole bunch of upgrades that are present in the game. So we are learning about, let's say, you put a Zeppelin on top of a Devastator, which is kind of a artillery unit, and that increases its range tremendously. So then when it goes into siege mode, its range is even increased more. You put some grenadiers, which is like a bazooka unit, next to those, and then you suddenly have like this entire barrage of the equivalent of rockets flying at you through, which is almost impenetrable unless you find a counter tactic to that. And so these are all things that we're teaching the AI to do against you also. So that should be offer quite a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. Are you ready, Farhang?
We're absolutely ready.
Excellent. Let's see what's going on then.
So, this is a strategy map. I'm the green guy, so the green bordering countries are mine. In this case, I have one country. That country has a capital. When the capital country is invaded, you actually lose the game and you're out. There's two attributes that every country has, which are the gold value and also the population. So the gold value is quite important because the more countries you own per turn, the more gold revenue you'll get every turn. And the population is used as a resource in the RTS gameplay. So the entire population is shared by everyone playing the game, but the recruitment centers actually drain recruits from the population, which has an interesting mechanic because at a certain moment the population will finish and people can't build anything anymore. And of course, the cards that you bring with you, for instance, you have cards that can decrease the population. I think I have one somewhere in here. Yeah. So this card actually brings the population of a country down by 35%, which is quite nice because if you can do that, it actually means that your initial army plays a bigger role when you're actually in the RTS combat because there's less resources for the other players to build things. So it's kind of a sneaky way to, you know, pool the statistics towards yourself in case you have a huge army invading a country. Now I'm teamed up together with Octave, our lead QA, and he's a pretty intense StarCraft 2 player, and he's over here on this island and he's going to try to invade Everrealm. As you can see, these countries also have different buildings on them. These buildings have different functions, predominantly to give you cards. And in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move my units around to actually capitalize as much as I can and take over as many countries as I can so that I can have a higher gold revenue for the next turn. Units actually have movement points. So in this case, this tank has 2 movement points as well as my jeeps.
You mean hunters, right?
Hunters, yeah. Sorry about that.
Armors, hunters, devastators.
Armors. Yes, correct. Tanks are armors, and jeeps are hunters. The movement points actually determine through how many countries they can move through. And if I want, I can actually buy new units. So the capital also functions as a factory, but you can also build factories separately on other countries. So if we open the menu and click on the buy units, you can see that we have ground units and air units and also naval units. In this assist Octave, well, actually, I'm going to check out if I have a card before I do this, because there are cards that actually increase your production. So we can access the play card menu.
We do have a question from the Twitch TV screen. Are there more than one map available for people to play on?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. This is a map that we're playing, but if you initiate your campaign or multiplayer, you can actually choose from a variety of maps in different sizes. We got them in small sizes. We have maps that have over 105 countries as well. So it really depends of how and what way you want to play this game with your friends or people online. And of course, the game can be saved at any time on the map by the host.
So in multiplayer, you can play for a while, then say, "Hey guys, we'll meet again next week."
Absolutely, that's possible. And you can also have other people playing instead of, for instance, your friend that can't play that evening because he's not there.
Cool.
So I played my card, which actually allows me to buy a unit and get one for free, which is really nice because I want to buy a couple of very expensive units, these balloons, and I'm going to move them towards the battlefield. So I'm going to get 4 balloons and some fighters. That should be okay. Of course, another thing worth mentioning is through this country menu of your capital, you can also access your unit research. If you research unit upgrades on the strategy map, they'll be permanent throughout the entire game, but you can also unlock unit upgrades during combat, but then they will only be available during the combat round. So I bought these guys. I'm going to move them to the edge of the map because in Dragon Commander the map actually wraps around, so it is not visual at this point, but we're working on that. So I'm going to move my bomber down, and I'm going to see if I can get him here and move him into Everrealm as well. So I'm doing this so that in the battle that Octave is going to participate in, I'll at least have some heavy units to start out with and actually back him up. I'm going to do the same for my fighters as well. And you'll notice every time you move your unit, you actually get the unit splitter, and this unit splitter allows you to determine how many units you actually want to send into the battle to participate. This is pretty much everything for me. I'm just going to end my turn, and then we can see what's going on. So everybody's making his moves simultaneously, but once you end the turn, the moves get executed in a sequence. Because this is the first turn, actually Octave starts first because he's... and then he'll be followed by the red player, which is player 2, then green, and then yellow. The next turn, player 2 will start with his initial moves first, and the third turn it'll be green that starts, and so forth. So that's also some tactical aspect that you'd like to keep in mind if you're blitzing through countries in order to gain some advantages.
Wacht even.
So at this point, yellow is moving his units. Okay, so this is the moment where we get our questions to actually go into battle or automatically resolve it. If you choose to auto-resolve, the game will dice out the battle for you. So you can typically play the campaign without actually getting into one RTS battle. It's all up to the players if they want to do that. You can just exhaust the RPG bit on the ship. But right now we're going to choose the battle. So all parties involved are going to be available in this battle. And once you initiate the battle, you actually get to the card screen. So we have two types of cards in Dragon Commander. We have the strategy cards, which you play on the strategy map, and we have the combat cards. And as you can see, there's 5 slots available here, 4 cards. 2 of them are blind, which means that you can't see the cards that your opponents are playing. And when you click on them, you can actually play your card. So in this case, I'm going to play a Dragon skill, which is a Protect skill, which is quite useful because once you cast it on a unit, it actually protects it and makes it invulnerable for a certain amount of turns. We also have mercenary cards, which are cards that allow me to use these units only during this battle round, which is quite nice, but they won't influence the statistics after the battle. Because we have a survival rate which calculates how many of the units you bring with you in the RTS battle will remain after the battle is over on the strategy map. So I'm going to play a couple of these cards in here, and then we're going to head into battle.
Alrighty, I had a question coming from, again, in the stream here. People are asking, are you, does this multiplayer support LAN and hot seat?
Yes, definitely. It supports LAN play, so you'll be able to play it at home or with your friends or at LAN parties.
Alrighty, cool. But I think hot seat's impossible because it's real time. Yes, when you
that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work very
well. That's
well.
what I figured. You can hot seat auto resolve. Yay!
So, okay, so we started the combat. This is typically a mixed map, which means that the map actually has land areas as well as sea areas. So these are those initial units that I bought. Octave is the blue team, and he actually has quite some units to begin with. And these are capture points. So these points can only be captured by land units, and you capture them by naturally moving your units close to them. The more units you have, the faster you capture. At the top of the screen, you can see digits next to the gold amount, which actually should be the population, but mind you, it's still a game in development. It says that there's 2,320 population available, and the recruitment center, which is the building here, at this point is drawing 5 population every 3 seconds. Now, the more recruitment centers you actually build, the faster you drain the population, which is quite useful, so you naturally want to get your hands on as much resources as you can. And at this point I'm just going to build some barracks so that we have those going, and I'm going to be capturing this spot at the water, which can be an airfield or a harbor. And I've got 2 priest units there with 2 devastators, which are artillery class units. I'm going to send them on. The smaller spots are used for turrets. And in the meantime, Octave is getting ready at the center of the map, and he's actually making a barricade here, and he's getting ready to move. I'm going to send in my troops as well, so they can start doing some damage. I'm going to send these fighters in to attack the bombers of the red team, and I'm going to send my bombers in to attack the ground units. In the meantime, I'll press the R button so I can spawn as a dragon, and I'm going to protect my front balloon so that in each case he can take most of the hits, and I'll fly in with my dragon to do some occasional damage. I can also fly rock the enemy units, and I can use a special skill which is an imposter. It's an equivalent to a nuke. In the meantime, they're decimating my units here. I'm going to use my heal skill to actually heal some of Octave's fighters here. So they got healed there, and the enemy dragon of the red team is actually active in the battle. So I'm going to pursue him and take him out. Of course, as you can see, the downtime that you have on your RTS is when you play as a dragon. So the natural trade-off when you're switching away is that you'll not be able to keep an eye on your base while you're doing this. So I just mapped my barracks to my so I can access it easily. I'll set a control. I'm going to set the rally point here so the units automatically move there. And I just got a warning on the Google Plus thing saying, "Are you still there?" Yes, I'm here. So we're gonna build some more of these grenadier units, and in the meantime I'm going to see if we can, but I don't have enough recruits to research. So I'm gonna send these guys forward. and they're going to move in here. Octave at this point is actually putting his artillery units in siege mode so that they actually have an increased range, and he also buffed his units with his dragon, with his leadership skill, so those up arrows on his units means that they actually do more damage and have higher defenses. Now at this point the other team is starting to build some more units and start some kind of initiative to retaliate. And I think this is a very good moment to start building a harbor so we can create juggernauts, which are kind of battleship class units, to send them in. I have a bunch of local together with priests. Priests are quite handy naturally because they can heal your units, and they also have certain control skills like petrify and of course additional healing skills. They can also teleport units and shield them as well. So I'm just going to select my priests and cast the protect skill on my artillery and send these guys forward.
It is worth noting, because some people are asking, there are naval units you'll be able to build as well. I think they may not have heard you when you said that.
Absolutely. My harbor is done at this point, and I'm going to build a couple of battleships. Set the rally point in the middle here, and once they'll be done, they can move in. And as you can see, Octave actually has zeppelins here, and these zeppelins are quite useful because they're complementary units. So their primary function is to increase the firing range of the units. And I'm going to set my artillery is here to siege mode. I'm going to put my priests right behind them so they can start healing them when anything happens. And with the grenadiers, I'll move in to take out the panzer units. Grenadiers naturally function well against buildings and units that have heavy armor.
Could you mention, for instance, what the Zeppelins can do also, what the upgrades are that are possible?
Yeah, so the as I said, every unit has about 3 to 4 different upgrades, and these Zeppelins have a couple of interesting upgrades. They have fire bats, which are missiles that they can fire at ground units, air units, and buildings. Hold on, I gotta move in to build some units here. Otherwise, Octave's army is going to not do so well. Let's also protect these guys. That's okay. I might go in here to cast another skill and just finish it off here. Out that artillery, quite some damage, and you also have other skills as well that can shut down the primary function of units. For instance, okay, so this fighter got me because he's an anti-air unit, but as I was saying, the Zeppelin also has another very interesting skill, which is cloak area, which is really cool because it allows the Zeppelin to actually cloak an entire army while it moves forward. And if you don't have a automatic cloak detection on your units, then they'll never be able to see the units until they make their primary attack.
Farhan, are you still there? The message is back again.
Yeah, he is still there. But I also, if you could briefly mention, Farhan, obviously you died as a dragon, so what happens in game?
Yeah, when you every time you actually spawn your dragon, it'll cost you recruits, so you're basically sacrificing your recruits in order to get there. And what's going on? Can you guys see my message or not?
I would say turn your camera off and on again. That should reset the video for Google Plus's Are You There?
Okay, so let's see, how do we do that? But concerning the dragon, so every time you actually use your dragon, it uses recruits. So basically you're sacrificing population to spawn the dragon, and you can use your dragon at any time, but you have to be near your own units or your allies' units in order to be able to use your dragon. So the only condition for spawning is that you have enough recruits and that you're close to ally units or your own units and buildings. So at this point, Octave is already breaking through. I have my battleships here, which I can launch certain missiles with. So as you can see, they're already attacking them from the sea. I'm going to find them out there. And I'm going to launch one.
Clear the way.
There we go. Octave's back. And we should have audio again.
Okay.
Alrighty here. So we have audio once again. Hello. Sorry about that, guys.
All right.
We had one computer we forgot to tell it we were actually still here for.
Okay.
Alrighty. So that was the you win screen. We have the you win screen. So you guys saw how if you surrender, things end. Because once things are brutally obvious that you haven't won because you're playing against Octave and everyone should know better than to play against Octave, you can just surrender to limit your pain and humiliation a little bit.
Yes, that's correct.
So with that said, we have a few more questions that have popped up from people. Let me pull one up here. You had mentioned that this takes place, I think, 8,000 years before the events of Divinity's Divinity's RPG series.
Yes.
So obviously technology is different in the Divinity RPGs than they are in Dragon Commander. Can you talk about why without making anything spoilery?
I will. So, because actually at the very beginning of the game, you are going to be given the mission by Maxels. He says, I want to get rid of all of this technology. He says it is destroying this world, and if we were going to keep on having this arms race that is going on now, it will be the end of the world. So your very mission is going to be actually to build up technology to destroy other technology, because there's a demonic angle to all of that tech. And if you've played Divinity 2, the Dragon Knight saga, then at the end you see that they're finally starting to recover some technology because they start having Zeppelins and what have you. So it took some time for them to recover from what's happening in Dragon Commander.
Cool. All right. People are also asking, so multiplayer games, obviously, particularly if you've got a large map on the strategy board, can take a while. But once you're actually in the RTS section, you guys have a feel for about how long those games tend to run?
Yeah, it's going to depend on how you play, what victory conditions you're going to say. We've seen games that last as little as 10 minutes, and we've seen games that last around 20 to 25 minutes. It really depends on how you set up the game speed, what victory conditions, and so forth. There's a whole bunch of settings that you can customize, and so it's really up to you what you prefer playing.
Cool. Is there, because some people here are hardcore RTS people, is there some way you can, when you set up the conditions for combat, say, you know what, this is straight RTS, the dragons aren't going to influence things?
No, not at the moment. We would discover during the closed beta that there's a very big demand for it. We might consider it, but really, I mean, the dragon is something new, so
Yes.
people don't know yet how that feels to play it. You should think of it like a hero unit in Warcraft 3,
Sure.
and so it might look complex because you just saw some experienced players play against one another, but when you start playing it, it starts very simple, and you build up gradually, and you feel the power of the dragon, and then you start figuring out, hey, but I can do this, and I can do this. What's also been not highlighted because we're trying to do this in 1 hour is how important the technology research is throughout your campaign, because you really get the equivalent of a Cold War going on. If I enter with a battle with plenty of stealth technology available and you don't have anything against that, well, you better hit that surrender button.
Okay. Well, we're coming up. The pre-orders start on my clock in about 3 minutes. Of course, we want to reward the people who are here on the channel. What we're going to do is there's a special coupon code that Larian and GOG are offering you guys. That is, if you go to www.gog.com/redeem/Larian, you'll get a coupon code for an extra $2.20-something off of the pre-order price, and you can see that now on your screen. So you can, if this is exciting to you, which I certainly hope it is exciting to me, you can see a little more discount on your pre-order as a thanks for watching this. I have some more questions popping up in chat. One of them is, as in the language of RTS, they talk about a rock paper scissors system where there's sort of asymmetric balance need. One unit counters one unit, which counters a third unit. Is that a kind of structure you guys are pursuing here, or are you looking for something different as you're making your RTS gameplay?
There's definitely a lot of RPS inside of the game, but as I said, the fact that technology is something that is researched and might not necessarily be present in somebody else's hands gives you a different dynamic, which is not necessarily something that you've played before also. So it's when you're playing a campaign against each other, you really can like say, oh no, he has a nuke and I don't have anything against it. I'll just give up. But that's okay because it's just one battle. It's not a war that you've lost, because then you'll go back to your war map and you'll tell your generals, well, the equivalent of your generals, like, we need something against nukes. We need an SDI defense. Otherwise, we're dead. And so if you don't do anything about that, and that's exactly the experience that we're trying to get you of this Dragon Commander gameplay in single player.
Okay, so you have, as you've mentioned, a heavy board game inspiration in the strategic map. As we're seeing elements here, the card game, and we're seeing elements in the strategy with you get different units in different areas. Was all of this prototyped out first in the board game, and so we're seeing the experiences you guys had in the board game, or are you trying out new things in the game as well?
It started out with the board game, but then as we started making the game, we learned ourselves what the game needed, and it was talking to us, just like the ship talks to the imp, I guess. It was saying, I need this, and we started trying things out. I mean, the game went through a lot of iterations because it was not an easy game to design. It was from concept, we always had what it had to be, but to get the actual mechanics right, it took us a bit longer than we expected, and it took more iteration than we wanted.
Can you talk a bit about that iteration and how you're balancing units against each other? And it's a I'd say complex game, but definitely one that I can see as rewarding once you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, so right now we're literally playing it a lot with a lot of people, and we're going to increase that pool of people when we're going to announce the closed beta test, and then hopefully the public beta test also. We're tracking what's happening. We're seeing some mechanics are being used too much, so we'll down tweak them a bit. Others are being used too little, so that means they're not okay. Some have to be redesigned because there's really a huge pool, and we're pretty sure that when we're going to release the game, we'll probably not have the right balance yet, so we'll have to keep on maintaining it as it's being released. I mean, there's nothing to be done about it. You have hundreds of cards. You have 60 upgrades on units. You have, I think it's 25 or something skills on the dragon that you can put. You have multiple dynamic maps that you can do. There's land, sea, and air warfare. So it's very rewarding, but we will need some community help to get everything right in terms of balancing, I think.
Awesome. All right. So give me the pull quote for the back of the box. What makes this game the most awesome one you guys have made?
It's got dragons, it's got jetpacks, it's got strategy, it's got RPG, it's got RTS, it's got board game. I mean, it's all good things in life are present in this game.
It's really an experience. I mean, it's really this whole experience that you go through. That's the most unique thing about Dragon Commander. Really, it's the whole thing from the beginning till the end. It's not typically a game. It's really this overarching experience that you go through. So that's I guess the most thing about the game.
And the thing is that nobody believes us because they say, yeah, people have been telling us that all the time, but they're always lying. It's always PR bullshit, but we actually mean what we're saying here.
Well, I think we've done a good job showing in a kind of condensed format just how much there is to this game and what kind of experience it is. With that said, unless you have something more that you really want to show the audience here watching, I think they can go pre-order the game and we can end the call here. You guys good?
We're good to go. Maybe just a small reminder that we're still running 16 days on Kickstarter with Divinity Original Sin. So I'm sorry about plugging that in, Trevor.
No, go ahead.
You started with it. So.
Do be sure you see here on the channel on Facebook at /GobCom or at /Dragon Commander. Look us up, like us, tell all your friends about the Kickstarter, and tell all your friends about the pre-order on GOG. Help make Larian make this and Divinity Original Sin the best game they've ever put out.
Thank you, Trevor. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you all for watching. And this will go up online in a recording very shortly, so thank you very much.
All right.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
And now I think you guys have to end the call.
Oh, well, I don't know where to click because Octave ran away.